Hey, and welcome to the Intuitive Intelligence Podcast hosted by Bernadette Gold and Julie O'Brien. Welcome back, you guys. I'm going to start us with our opening prayer. Heavenly Father, give us the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and a heart to understand all you wish us to know. Help us co-create a life of love, joy, and compassion for ourselves and others. Welcome, everybody. This episode, we're going to talk about the dark night of the soul, and we're going to jump in just a minute. But before we do, I just want to welcome all of you and introduce myself. I am a psychic and spiritual mentor, teacher, and life and business coach, success mentor. Julie, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Bernadette. And I am a master NLP and energy practitioner and coaching to all those facets of life as well. I'm a bit of a multi-passionate in coaching. Thanks, Bernadette.
You're welcome. Our links are in our bio, but also don't forget, if you're listening to us on whatever podcast app that you get your podcast, subscribe so that you are notified as soon as we drop a new podcast. All right. I just want to remind you guys of that, but we are going to jump in. This is a big topic. So, we're going to cover it as extensively as we feel like we can in this time frame. If we need to go into the next podcast, we certainly will. We have some cool episodes coming up. We just did a few already. I'm actually going to have, you're going to love this, Julie, Beverly Sosi, who is a addictions therapist, psychotherapist, on our podcast next week. And we're going to talk about, addiction and addiction recovery, what causes addictions, and how to recognize them, how they interfere with your ability to be spiritual. And that episode I actually named last night Synthetic Spirituality, because it's such a big deal. So I hope that you guys will join us for the upcoming podcast. And now that that's all out of the way, I just want to get y'all up to date on what we're doing and welcome you here. We are definitely, it looks like we've got some tech issues. It is still the Mercury retrograde. My co-host dropped off and she is in Australia. So we're going to give her a minute to jump on here, but I'm just going to jump in and there she is. Hello, miss.
Hello. I don't know what the internet wanted to do then, but it got rid of me.
That's okay. That's okay. I just was talking about where we're headed with the next couple episodes. And so, let's just talk about this dark night of the soul. And I'll just give a basic kind of overview. And we'll kind of jump into it, like some of the symptoms so that people can recognize, right? You and I both have experience with going through the dark night of the soul. So maybe we can tell our own experiences and what that looks like and what it creates.
Definitely.
But let me go through the symptoms. Some of the signs you can look for to recognize you're actually undergoing a dark night of the soul, which is a period of growth for the soul. It's sort of a spiritual depression, for lack of a better way to put it. It can cause confusion. It can make you feel like you should be happy, but you're not. Like you're feeling very much down and discontent. And there's it just kind of came on suddenly. Your illusions about what really matters start to break down. Like your understanding what you value in life starts to break down and change. You can start having purge symptoms, detox symptoms that can actually be a physical thing. It can be that you're purging people, jobs, your environment. There can be an overwhelming sense of being stuck or lost or confused and not knowing what direction to go with your life. That's another symptom of the dark night of the soul. Your desires to impress people or deal with people on a superficial level virtually kind of disappears. You can't tolerate that anymore. You may begin to resonate to new spiritual teachings or philosophies, like go on a spiritual search for meaning. The other symptoms have to do with like random memories or dreams start coming up that there's meaning to it. You start to radically rethink, like, what does success mean to me? All those meanings in your life start to change. You recognize that you've got some inner child woundings that need to be addressed, and they won't go away. Um, you may realize or understand like that there are actual ego programs going on, that people are living social programs and family programs and all kinds of different conditioning, and you're knowing that you have those programs somewhere in you. Maybe you don't recognize what they are, but they're adding to your feeling of confusion, overwhelm, and depression. You may even go through the point of having like irrational paranoia or frightening thoughts. You may be afraid that you're dying because everything just feels so off to you. You might begin to recognize and feel what true suffering is. Your empathy or your gift of empathy may increase suddenly without notice. And it may be that you start to come to new revelations. Your sleep patterns may be disturbed too. Coincidences or synchronicities might pile up. And there's also the symptom of feeling like you need to sit still, but you're so used to going, you don't know how. And then you begin to investigate what consciousness is, what intention is. And you may even uncover some dormant healing abilities. That's all stuff that kind of makes up a dark night of the soul. A dark night of the soul can last a day, a week, a year, 10 years. It's different for everybody. I think that we have more than one dark night of the soul for every level that we tend to kind of ascend or climb. I think we end up experiencing a new dark night. So what do you think about all of those, Miss Julie? Because you've obviously helped clients through it. You've been through your own, right?
And it's interesting listening to that list, and that is a great list because as you were saying, each one, it's like, oh yes, 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 because of course when it started and when you're in it, to make sense of any of it is just so overwhelming. There seems to be a disconnect to anything that makes sense. And so I know, firstly, with working with others, it is very recognizable to know when somebody, well, for me, if somebody's in a depression, or if they're in a dark night of the soul. And I actually didn't understand it myself when I was going through it. I just labeled it as depression. And, when it starts to physically debilitate you, or I chose to leave work, the last one I had, you do go and see doctors and people like that will definitely classify it as depression. And I think that's just the human working with spirit. So either or, it's great to know that the both can be so similar, and working on either of them is definitely going to be helpful.
But there's a point to a dark night of the soul. Depression doesn't necessarily have a point to it.
No.
Dark night of the soul actually has a point to it.
Yeah, and I love that distinction, because I think for me now, and I think I got through two before I understood what they were and what I could feel and understand that they were. And what I was quite fortunate about is in my last one is of course when I met you. It's how I met you, because it sent me on my journey. And I think the last one was when I really allowed myself to understand that there was gifts and there were learnings, and there was just so much of an up-leveling through what could be very, very devastating and depleting and just energy degrading. One thing I'd love to sort of get your point of view on as well is, for me, the biggest thing has been that it's when I'm in it very deeply, there's been an absolute yearning and touch into going home. Because you actually feel into what going home would be about, and it was just so attractive and so enticing that it was like, here's my opportunity.
It can
So
be. I think
yeah.
that's one of the things we have to watch for is that escapism, the desire to
Mm,
escape, because
yeah.
it's that collapsing of the illusions, right? Like the
Mm,
illusions start to collapse and you're like, this isn't who I really am. I want to go home to where I can express who I really am,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
But even sort of being able to open up to those gifts and really feeling that that's where it comes from, there's just that split moment where the human connects with spirit again, and you decide, I'm here, and
It
it's
is.
about how do I move forward.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. For
yeah.
me, I think the many times I've gone through it, and I know there's been a few really long periods for me of the dark night of the soul. For me, it was the most growth I've done. Those
Mm,
periods were the periods of time when I experienced the most amount of growth in the shortest amount of time. I guess I should
yeah.
say, on a emotional level, on a spiritual level, on even a mental understanding level. I think
Mm,
those were the periods where I grew the most. They're also the periods where I lost the most in the physical
mm,
world. Whether
mm.
that be financial, relationships,
Yeah.
my mind. What's the saying? You have to lose your mind sometimes to find it. And truly, that is what happens during a dark night of the soul. Like, especially if it's your first one and you don't know, you feel like you're losing your mind and you may very well lose it. But what you're losing is the programmed mind,
Mm, definitely.
right? The
Definitely.
unconscious mind starts to lose control. And then our higher mind kicks in and our intuitive intelligence kicks in. And we start to see things so very differently.
Mm. And it's the battle with the conscious mind that really wants to hold on to that, because as destructive as the old patterning can be, there's the comfort of knowing what the outcome is, though. So
Right.
I would rather stay with what I know than let go and have the fear, the conscious fear of the unknown. And it definitely, one of those things that you were mentioning, it really ignites our fears and our shadows so extensively that even as of last week on something that I was sort of chatting with and working through for myself, it was like, wow, the root of that is still it's still
Yeah.
there. It's working with it at a different level, because
The way that spirit explained depression even to me, because when I started to understand dark night of the soul and depression, spirit said, think of it as something, some belief system, some action, some behavior is literally compressing who you really are. Like, think of yourself in a tube and or a trash compactor, and that compactor is trying to push down who you really are more and more and more and more. So it's literally depressing your soul, is depressing your spirit, like you're not fully expressing your unique nature, your infinite self, your higher mind. You're not expressing that. And so what comes out of that is a feeling of not being happy and a feeling of lethargy, and the joy is stripped out and the gratitude's gone, right? Like that's what the dark night of the soul is, or what depression is. And what spirit explained to me is, you're depressing your spirit, you're holding your soul down.
it's depressing the
It's
spirit
pushing
in
down,
that
right?
sense.
Like it's that,
Mm,
like they showed me when I was younger, like the picture of being in a trash compactor, but where all four walls closed in.
mm,
So the bottom,
mm,
the top, and the sides. And I had this dream, a reoccurring dream from the time I was about 5 years old on. Like I would have it, and it would happen during periods where I felt the most unable to express my gifts. The
mm.
times where I felt the most unseen and unheard, or
Yeah.
that I didn't belong wherever I was, or didn't belong doing what I was doing, that compactor, I would have that dream. And still to
Yes.
this day, it'll come back. Like the last time I had it was probably a year ago in the scope of having a relationship. Now is my signal, like you're making a decision against your own soul right now, Bernadette. Like the walls are literally closing in, but that in an unconscious state, we get
Mm,
that where it's like we close ourselves, our higher self, our true self starts to get pushed and shoved into this tiny box where it can't express itself fully. And then we experience things like depression, and we say things like, I'm not happy. I don't know what will make me happy. Nothing brings me joy anymore. All this just happened all of a sudden. Maybe there's some physical illness or physical symptoms. And that is that place of you're not in alignment with your higher self, your true self. Like it's being compressed, it's being depressed.
Yeah.
And so to get out of that, then there has to be the conscious understanding of, okay, what are you doing to hold back who you truly are? And what can you do to free that up?
Definitely. And I feel too, it's also a really big indication of whether you're living on purpose or off purpose.
Absolutely.
So I know, and I probably, and this is what I love, and this is the learnings that it does gift us with, is that each time, and it's interesting because each one has gotten a bit deeper and deeper. Again, the learnings and the awakenings are so much heightened afterwards, that now when things get triggered, I'm able to really, really grab it quite quickly to go, okay, I must be off purpose. I must be out of alignment. It's time to stop for a minute. And I think the greatest thing it taught me as well is patience, because it's very easy, especially if you take on different roles and just roles and things that you do, you can get into that matrix of automatic thinking and, just on autopilot, that we don't stop to check in. And this definitely allowed me to learn to have patience.
Yes.
So that even when I'm decision making, or when I'm allowing myself to contemplate something, I really allow myself the time and to just eliminate anything that puts urgency on it. And I also think you learn to communicate to others on how they can create that space around you. You can just say, because there'll be others around you that may need things to be done quickly, or the way that they work is to be done quickly, and you can sort of learn to communicate, that's not how I work. So it empowers you very much.
Well, I think one of the things too that we have to address, to be fair, sometimes when someone enters into their first dark night of the soul or whatever, the first inclination of the unconscious mind is to numb out those feelings. So we'll turn to food, or we'll turn to drugs, or we'll turn to alcohol, we'll turn to, or sex, relationships. I mean, sometimes even work, to try and numb that discomfort that comes with the understanding that nothing even means anything. We try to find something to grab, something to hold on to, or something to numb. And in that place where your soul is trying to awaken you to another level of understanding, where your truth can come out and be expressed, that's the place we have to be very aware of. Like, are you doing that? Because I know for me, when I was in my 20s and I went through a really harsh dark night of the soul, and it lasted a couple of years. This was not like a couple of weeks. This was a couple of years, where I went into high search mode and study mode. I was also having a hard time, and I couldn't sleep. So I would drink at night, or I would try to go and party, or I'd try and find a boyfriend, or I just try to achieve something in the world, even though I had lost the meaning that those things even meant anything to me, struggling to just maintain some semblance of what's normal in society. But when you're undergoing a dark night of the soul, it's not about being in alignment with society anymore. It's about the understanding of higher learning, and that there is something bigger than you, right? Something greater than you and what you've lived thus far, calling you forth to express something bigger, something better. So we have to be aware of that, because I know a lot of people too that have gone through dark nights of the soul that they'll get stuck in that place where they're like just trying to numb it, because, oh my God, I just want to not feel like this. And it's not a good feeling. It's scary.
No. And of alike, I think, those that are familiar with the hero's journey, it's that time of retreating into the cave. And sometimes that in itself, it's so protecting, it's so nurturing, that just to stop and hide away. And I know for me, and even, the last 12 months, I realized just how secluded I had become, even to function. I have 3 children, and I still function, but the intention behind making sure that I was just secluded
Yeah.
and didn't partake in things. And I think you've mentioned this before, maybe even on the last podcast. You really need to be mindful of that, because now that I'm mindfully taking action to socialize more, I'm feeling the difference because I've taken some numbing agents away. It really takes, not effort, but
It does take a ton of effort to deal with those situations. I've talked to quite a few clients and walked them through their dark nights of the soul when they didn't realize that's what they were going through. And again, it can be a very scary thing, right? All of a sudden, you hit what's called 0 point. And 0 point is that place where everything you thought meant something all of a sudden means nothing. You hit zero. And from 0, now you have to find the true meaning in things. But you can't find that when you go to numb out the depression or numb out the anxiety that comes with hitting a dark night of the soul. You just can't. One of the things that I want all of you to be aware of, if you are experiencing some level of depression, it doesn't always mean that you're experiencing a dark night of the soul. They're two different things. Depression can be real. It is real, different than dark night of the soul. But real depression can be caused by physiological things, chemical imbalances, hormonal imbalances, right? That or psychological imbalances, where dark night of the soul is like, you're fine, and it hits out of the blue, and it hits all of a sudden. And it does put you on this search for meaning, for more. The mundane doesn't entertain you anymore. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's sort of, I'm just thinking there's a couple of people at the moment who have gone down the diagnosis of depression, and they have been heavily medicated for a long time. Both have experienced extreme circumstances. One's in the army, and one, it was just childhood abuse. Not just, but it was different in the way that it was from childhood that's resurfaced. And so what's been interesting is watching, even amongst the chemical imbalance, is once they really start to feel empowered about this being for a higher purpose, and even though they don't understand the full concept, because both of these people I've been watching, the really accelerated shift that they are making, and they're explaining this with the doctors, and the doctors have been extremely supportive, things happen a lot quicker, and the healing is just amazing. And I think there's parts of it, instead of it being disowned as it's a psychosis, they're actually going, hang on a minute, this is a gift. And the intention behind it and the framing of it has made such a difference for them. And I love watching that.
Well, and I mean, when you're talking dark night of the soul, literally to heal it on a more alternative, natural, holistic, like in that sort of way, you have to take on the whole being. This isn't about just let's deal with your past traumas. That is one aspect of it. You also have to look at what is your diet. Because the more the soul or spirit of a person, the true nature of a person wants to be expressed, the higher the vibration they want to hold and express from, means that they actually need to be in alignment with the higher vibration in what they intake, with food, with drink, with their environment, who's around them, right? When the soul wants to go to a whole other level, evolve, ascend, however you want to put it, then we have to think about higher vibrational foods, right? So a lot of people that go through the dark night of the soul, they'll go through it and they're like, is it something I'm eating? Before they realize they're going through it, they're like, oh my God, am I allergic to some sort of food? I'm having all these physical symptoms. Nothing even sounds good anymore. And then so naturally they just start to eat better, choose more natural foods. And then they realize, yeah, that made a dent, but there's still a discomfort here. There's still a misalignment here. I'm still somewhat depressed and disillusioned with the world around me. And then they start to do more investigation, and it's like, okay, that's because I'm around toxic people all the time. So they start to change their friends,
Mhm.
And then beyond that, you know, they still feel that pressure and they learn more things and they're like, oh my God, I put value there and I put value there. It's all material. It's all very surface, it's superficial. I don't want to do that anymore. That's not in alignment with what my soul wants to express. And so they start to put value in kindness and empathy,
Mm.
love, and they start to spend time on their own and they start to journal and be more conscious. That's the evolution out of the dark night of the
Yeah.
soul, and what that process of death and rebirth, and that is what the dark night of the soul is about. It's about a metaphorical death and
Yes.
rebirth process, and
Yeah.
it's beautiful, and we need to embrace it, not drug it.
Hmm. That's right. And I found what was interesting for me, because the story for many years, whether it be food or alcohol, and I do come from a line of addictive personalities, is that for a long time, and not sort of sleeping, it was very much that this was it. This is how it is. What's been interesting, that when I took the focus off that problem as such, and really embraced the development and the awakening in my spirit, and moving through the dark soul of the night, is that I really just felt intuitively that I didn't feel like having that alcohol anymore, or
Yes.
there's certain foods, and I'm more mindful. And I thought, for years I've been focusing from headspace consciously on how I have to break this, bad habit, and you can hear it in the language. And it's, but I come from a line of all these addictive personalities. It's amazing that when you really move through that space and level up, it just is it's a knowing. So there's no, the battle is just taken away. And I've really loved that, because it's just more than being the conscious me who goes and socializes, as you said, in spaces that are still alike, where people will still choose to drink alcohol. I'm not, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be a problem, because I'm very, very confident in just the decisions that I'm making for me, and my energy vibration. So
You make
I do.
healthier choices when you're in the awareness of I'm breaking free from
Mm,
past lower vibrational realms and frequencies, which is what the purpose is of a dark night of the soul. You make different choices. You're not
definitely.
attracted to the lower vibrational stuff anymore, whether that's lower vibrational relationships that are toxic and dysfunctional, or alcohol, or
Mm,
junk foods, or you just find yourself more attracted to the things that are higher vibrational, more
mm,
attracted to the things that call to your true nature, right? So the
definitely.
superficial stuff then no longer matters. Arguments don't hold any energy or weight for you. People can say things about you and you're just like, yeah, whatever. I don't even care. Like, God
Mm,
bless you, be on your way, because I don't have the energy, time, and space to deal with it.
mm,
You know what I
mm.
mean?
Definitely,
But when you are
definitely.
unawakened before the dark night of the soul, you're still in unconscious reactive mode of, yeah, let's fight. Yeah, let me
Mm,
fight my way through this, where you can't. Dark night of the soul, that you can, there is no fighting your way through it. There is
mm.
surrender your way
Yeah,
through it.
yeah. And it's definitely coming from that heart mind as opposed from the head mind, because that's the space in which often the blocks or the challenges and all that, or the woundings have happened. And this is, as soon as you're healing through that space, it's just there's an ease and flow. And as soon as I know myself, as soon as I allow it to go back up into my head, and I want to make sense of, oh, but what can I put into place, or how can I organize a menu so that I'm going to eat well this week? As soon as I go into my head, forget it. As soon as I allow it just to settle in my heart space, and I feel through it,
Mhm.
and it's not always about the feeling great. It's about feeling the sadnesses that come up. But the biggest gift and the biggest awareness I learned was to feel the feeling regardless of what it was, because obviously along the way I'd learnt to stifle it down or numb it out. That it was about feeling it and knowing that I was still alive on the other side of it. That I could show vulnerability or rawness, and it actually made me stronger, not weaker, like they would have had me
Right.
believe earlier on. So yeah.
I think that's the thing we have to remember too. Um, Dark nights of the soul don't have to last forever. They can last as
No.
long as they need to for you to get what jewels and gems and treasures you need to out of it, or they can last just very quickly. The quicker you can surrender to the fact that that is what's happening, the quicker you
Mm.
can align to what your inner child and your higher self needs from you to facilitate that next step up in your soul's evolution, the faster you come out of that dark tunnel, the
Mm.
faster you understand and you can enter back into the higher vibrational frequencies and emotions of like joy and gratitude. I still use those during periods of dark nights of the soul that will get you through it, but you can't bypass. Like that's the one thing when you're in a dark night of the soul and you hit that 0 point and you have to build from there. It's a humbling experience. It's
Mm.
humbling.
Mm.
Like none
And,
other.
and it's often just the fear of, and it's the over, um, uh, my mother used to say to me, the anticipation is worse than the participation. And I think that when I allow myself to go through different spaces, it's knowing that to feel it is definitely part of the step through it, and to really drop down to the lowest of things is most definitely part of moving through and moving up. And it's just about a reprogramming of how you allow yourself to experience something. It's like sort of going, okay, everything I've ever known, let's just put it out the door for a minute. Or even when something comes up, I often sort of say, is this true? How much or how true? Uh,
Right.
because and things like week that we were taught things from an early age, and I suppose at some point that was true for what people knew at that time. Our accelerating so much, and there's so much we don't even know about our DNA, about our mind, about our feelings, about our spirit. It's into the habit of saying, I'm curious. How true is that for me? If it
Right.
was different, what would that be like? It allows you and gives yourself permission to think and do things differently. And you often find that it's an easier way than sitting in fear of what might happen. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I don't want to leave this episode of discussing and describing what the dark night of the soul is and what it does to you without giving some understanding and hopefulness, optimism of what comes out of it. So I'm going to share with you guys like what came out of one of the biggest periods, my first dark night of the soul, that I recognized that that was happening in my 20s. What came out of that was my ability to empathize with people. My gift of being empathic was kicked into high gear. My when I stopped numbing everything and trying to numb down my gifts or dull down my feelings and actually went into the mode of healing myself during that period of that dark night of the soul, when I was able to focus on really just looking at it, facing the shadows, what came out of it was this amazing attitude of gratitude is the first one. Um, an acceptance of who I am and my gifts and my abilities to heal myself, and further understanding that there is more going on than meets the eye, and an acceptance of that so that I could actually build upon my gifts in a strong way and navigate life in a different way than what society taught me.
Hmm.
At least that's what I get out of my first one. Um,
Hmm.
how about you, Julie? What'd you get out of your first dark night of the soul when you first understood that, yeah, this is what's happening and why it's
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah, and with me, in sort of I'm a different experiencer in the way that mine's always going to be hands on and experiencing. So I just allowed myself to walk through sea water and do art and do things that I just allowed myself to experience. And so what come out of that is a trust of my intuition, definitely, And in saying that, it was at times when, instead of questioning if something was a fear, if something was intuition, I would then allow myself the time to contemplate it, or I'd just make the decision knowing that if it wasn't quite the right decision, that I could make another decision. So the patience in and around, trusting my intuition was definitely a big one. And very much about just speaking my truth, because, I come from a teaching which was about, you don't tell people your business. And so
Right.
when you're in a space of absolute, I'm at the bottom of everything and everybody's going to hear this, it just allowed me to find the trusting spaces where I could truly open up and be honest. And there's very much an unconscious framing around that at times with people, where we don't know what we don't know. So therefore, it's not until we share that little bit and we feel that there's that connection, or there's that understanding and learning, that we will share more. So, for me, it was about my intuition. It was about trusting, and it was definitely about speaking my truth.
Absolutely. There's this, I remember, God, there was these just moments to keep this as real as possible. I remember there were moments when I was going through it where I mean, I did hit suicidal places. It was so painful to me, to be in that place, in what I call the in between, in between being completely asleep and ignorant of the fact that, there's all of these other things going on that I'm not connected to because I shut them out, I shut them off. Between that place of realizing it and what's possible, the infinite, there were places of just wanting, I can't take the pain of this. Like, I can't ride through the pain of this. It hurts. It's so lonely. Feeling, because dark night of the soul, and it's like the hero's journey, like Joseph Campbell talks about, literally, you feel like you're the only human on the planet going through it at that moment. And for you, in your reality, you are the only human being going through it in your experience at that moment. And it can feel like it's just never gonna stop. It's too much. There's never another daylight coming. This is my life. And I just want to encourage anyone who's going through it. Oh my God, don't even give up. Like, reach out to people that can help you see the light, or hold sacred space for you to just feel safe to express and be whatever, without feeling like you need to rush your way through it, or that anything's expected of you. Honestly, like, had I known, because nobody talked about this stuff back when I was going through it the first time. Like, I didn't know that this was a spiritual awakening. I didn't know that that's what was happening. It was me awakening to my spiritual gifts, stepping into my purpose and path and passion. I didn't know. I literally thought I was losing my mind.
Yeah, definitely.
And I didn't want to be crazy and locked up.
Yeah. But I think in saying that, and I know that you often hold the space, for me and others, that when you're in that space, you do feel so alone, that even when the right people are around you sharing the absolute answers that are correct for you, you still just don't feel it. And it's a place in which you can start to question your intuition, or you just go, look, you can't help me right now. And so I think the gift that, Bernadette, for yourself, that you've gone through this a number of times, you're very sort of clever in holding space while people have a little bit of a, I call it a spiritual tantrum, because I can have somebody there that's holding the space, and they're loving me, and they're accepting, and I'm trusting them, but I still have that little human thing that comes in and goes, no. I'm just, no, I'm out of here. And I know for me, it's just as you said, it's a very, very individual, isolated, alone feeling. Yet I think that's the importance, because when you do because our soul has choice. Depending on the choice that the soul makes in that moment, when you start to sort of move through, then you're ready to connect with those people who have been holding that space for you. So I think for me, what I'm trying to say here is, in those times you can often think, look, I don't want to burden that person, or, I'm not important enough for them to listen to my story, or, I've said it
Mhm.
10 times. When you have those people around you that know that, and they are still there, standing there for you, that it's okay, because nothing can make sense at those times, but it's there and it happens and you move through. And
And you do the work. I mean, because a dark
you
night of the
do.
soul, it does require self-examination. It does
Mm,
require taking inventory of your life, where you've been, where you're at, what you really, really want, and getting to know yourself. I mean, dark night of the soul is about connecting to who you are, not what everybody told you you were supposed to be. It's
yeah.
confusing that way. Like, well, wait a minute. I thought I was supposed to be successful and get married and have children. That was the end all be all. And I was going to be happy. End of story. No, no, that's not who you're supposed to be, Bernadette. You're supposed to be a psychic, and you're supposed to have these gifts, and you're supposed to be a healer. And you're not supposed to show horses. That's not the end all. You get to do that, but that's not your life purpose. The mundane world and what you thought was supposed to happen. Nope. And that's why it's no longer fulfilling you anymore. Look, there's another way to do life. You have to be willing to surrender to everything that you think you want, everything that everyone told you you should want. Surrender to all of that nonsense and be open to
Mm,
what wants to be birthed out. And literally, this is a birthing process. It's a
yeah.
birthing process of the truth of who you are. But birth, even giving birth, every woman on the planet who's given birth naturally without any drugs will tell you it's not pretty, it's not clean, and it hurts like a bitch.
Yeah.
I don't know any other way to say it.
No, that's and that magical thing that happens that between babies you forget.
You do
you,
forget,
you
right?
go through it the next time and you think, what was I? How did I forget this?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
5 minutes after the baby's born, you've forgotten because the pain just escapes you. But in the midst of it, you think, and even during childbirth, I had Bella naturally at home, and I literally thought my body was going to break in two. And my midwife lady had to keep telling me, your body was built for this. She'd say, this is the most natural thing in the world for every species on the planet. You can do this, Bernadette. And I'm thinking, no, you don't know me. And this is what we go through during Dark Night of the Soul when we're in resistance. We don't want to hear it. Right. My birth coach is telling me, you can do this. You were built for this. And I'm like, you don't know me. I have my own body. My body's breaking from the inside out. You don't know that I can do this. And she just kept saying, you can do this. And that's that thing you're talking about. Like when you have people around you holding sacred space that are being patient while you are still in that resistant place,
Yeah.
just keep going to them. And those of you who hold sacred space, don't get impatient, because we all have our little spiritual tantrums. We all have what I call the blinders. The ego blinders keep us in that place of resistance, and spirit just, chips it away with a chisel, slowly, 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 until enough of the truth is revealed that then we can actually embrace it. And then surrender comes easily. And we're like, oh, I get it. No longer are we saying, no, 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 no. We're saying, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Tell me more.
Yeah. And that is exactly how we develop our confidence in spirit,
Yes.
because it works and you go, wow, I denied you and yet you still come through for me. So it's a really beautiful relationship that gets built, and it's the same of being able to learn how to trust yourself.
I
And
actually
I think
think
that's the biggest.
the first dark night of the soul is you birthing the truth of who you are and having your human mind and your ego learn how to love and accept unconditionally
Yes.
your true self. I think that is what we're birthing, is that unconditional love and acceptance, removed from all of the societal filters and programs and BS and experiences and traumas and history, into a place of seeing and recognizing the true being that you are and falling in love with that. And letting that be okay. And not, you know what I mean? Like, that's just enough. Like, that's perfectly enough. just as
Yeah.
it is. It's you're birthing that love story. And it's a lifelong relationship that you continually have to, you can't go through one dark night of the soul and think, yeah, that's it, I've evolved. That doesn't work like that. Like that's the
Yeah.
first step.
Yeah.
And once
And
you
then
learn
even the
to love
layers of,
yourself,
yeah, and learning about yourself and who you are, the
yeah,
layers that will happen, and the bits, and it's the cycles, it's the seasons. It's like a, anyone that's been in a long-term relationship, or having children over an 18-year period, it always goes through cycles. You're not
yes.
always loving, you're not always understanding. There's times where you just think, this is it, I can't do it anymore, I'm done. And then all of a sudden this new thing comes through and you go, wow, I'm glad I stuck it out. And I think this is what it's this, the relationship that we have with ourselves.
Yes,
It just
absolutely.
because we're in this body doesn't mean that, and that learning to know who you are, and love yourself, it gives it such a deeper meaning, because then you really start to honor the soul's experience in this journey, and the vehicle and the roles that it plays.
And always remaining very humble about it, because you know that at any moment around any corner comes the next dark night of the soul as you step up the evolutionary ladder. And you know that you're going to have to go through it again, but you can do so more gracefully and gratefully because you recognize what it is.
Yeah, definitely. Repeat. There's a
You don't get to
there's a
skip
succession
it.
it goes through. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't get to skip it. You still have to go through it, but you will go through it more gracefully, I think. Um,
Mm,
when you know that, okay, something is trying to be birthed here, which means I'm still holding on to or attached to things that are not in my highest good, that want to be let go of, so
yeah.
that I can go to that next level. It could be the pursuit of something. It could be the relationship with someone. It could be the attachment of, any number of things on this planet. There's so many shiny objects that we are just like, I gotta have that hold us
Absolutely.
back from our soul's potential.
And knowing too that we are just that small piece in the bigger picture, in the
Absolutely.
collective consciousness, and you're playing your significant role, even if it is too. It doesn't matter, what your role is in life or what roles you choose to take. You are always displaying and modeling to others around you in all different ways, and when you're being it and you're doing it, it's always giving others courage and understanding and learnings.
Yes.
So of course we take, it's part of that evolution, as you said. We take those with us, and we continue to grow and evolve.
I think it's part of the duality on this planet too, that we do tend to like, unfortunately, it's been programmed in punishment and reward, right?
Mm,
So we go through
hmm.
suffering and then we get the reward and then we go through it again. And it is that cycle through the rites of passage,
Mm,
and seasons of life, right? The phases of life and growth. We continually cycle, but so does
mm,
everything on this planet. I mean, we don't have one season, we have four.
yeah.
And everything
Yeah.
continually moves and changes, and no season, no two seasons are the same. There are no two winners that are exactly the same. Each one is independent of the other.
Mm,
Our lives are
mm,
like that. Each phase of growth is like that. Each relationship, each aha moment, each evolutionary leap that our spirit does, and our gifts evolve through all of it, right? What I can do with my gifts now, I couldn't do 30 years ago,
mm,
right?
mm. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't think I could
definitely.
love like I do now, the way that I do now 30 years ago, because I didn't love myself that way back then. And that's that
Yeah.
first dark night of the soul is literally you're learning how to love yourself.
Definitely. And see, when it upgrades your vibration, or not upgrades, but when it changes your vibration, and
Mhm.
it changes your DNA, and it changes all those things that are significant to create the frequency in which attracts certain people, it's
Yes.
definitely part of, it's, gosh, it's just a small part of the bigger matrix of things. It's so significant. And you needed to take certain steps. We all do, before we can appreciate and go to the next step. It really is a
Absolutely.
color by numbers, or creating one step to the next, because sometimes I haven't realized to take or to make a decision which I truly felt in my heart was to completely break, say, a relationship, and really dislike that person, and all those sorts of things. But in my head, I needed to know that it was completely over before I could develop through that, then actually brought me back into that relationship very differently. And
Right.
so you just have to take those things that sometimes you think are, definites, and it's like, no, it was just a detour. It's just part of things. And yet we're doing that with that relationship within ourselves. And
Yes.
again, let's talk about consciousness and unconsciousness. It plays a massive part in how we think daily. So the importance of these conversations is so that just this little bit of knowledge or something that somebody has heard today allows them, it just has to be a drop of something, it allows them to think and do differently, from this point forward. That's the purpose of it all.
At least that's what we think right now. Maybe that will change in 10 years. I don't know, because we keep
That's
evolving.
right.
And that's okay.
Exactly.
It
That's
has
right.
to be okay that we are okay with not knowing anything.
Definitely.
I mean,
Definitely.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. There's just so much I don't know that, and so much I
Mm.
don't know that I don't know, and that will
Yeah.
continue for probably the rest of my life and on to eternity. Who knows? But I'm okay
Mm.
with that. It's humbling. It's humbling. It's exciting
Mm.
because there's so much
Mm.
more to learn and experience.
Yes. And see,
Right?
that framing it's in itself is just such a great way to be a support. It's a tool. It's a great tool to frame something up so that you can take it on as exciting as opposed to fearful. And
Yes.
that's what this can be about when it comes to mindset. It's getting some knowledge and framing it up so that it allows you to move forward in a really resourceful way, as
Yes.
opposed to taking it on as a battle. It's definitely better if you can go with the flow.
Yeah, but when we're used to controlling things, I mean, I think that's the
Mm,
hardest part. When you're in a dark night of the soul, you're no longer in control. When we as human beings, especially people like me that can be very type A,
mm,
very, very action oriented, when suddenly what used to work no longer works and you
mm.
realize you're not in control, it's a very
Yeah,
scary place to be.
yeah.
And
Oh, definitely.
when you finally surrender to, I'm not in control, but it's probably going to turn out better than it would have if I had been in control.
Mm,
Now life gets fun. Now life gets exciting.
yeah.
But you couldn't have told me that the first Dark Night of the Soul. I mean, I literally was feeling like, yep, somebody up there hates me. My life is falling apart. I have no control over anything. Everything's going downhill. And because I was on that lower frequency and wasn't looking for the right solutions, I mean, I was and I wasn't
Mm,
finding, I think, quickly as quickly as
mm,
I wanted to. Let me put it that way. I found answers very quickly and solutions very quickly, but we want it like in a day. We don't want it in a month or a
yes.
year. We want it like, give me a pill. In fact,
Yeah.
and one of my clients was like, can't you just give me a pill that's going to fix all of this and make, I wish. Everybody wants the happy magic pill. There is none. You have to go
Yeah.
through this.
Mm. And that's part of that old human conditioning of that instant gratification
Yes.
and the instant fix. And even to look at how society is now with technology, everything, going through a drive-through, it's all about quick, instant
Yes.
gratification, fulfillment, getting what you need, convenience, and it's
And
taken
avoiding
us
pain.
away. Definitely.
Avoid
Uh,
pain and no effort on my part.
yeah, yeah,
Yes. It doesn't work
definitely.
like that. I mean, you can go to a healer or somebody that says, I have the solution for you, and you might feel better for a little while. But if you
Mm,
don't take that session of healing or information and do something with it, you're just going to end up feeling exactly the way you were before you went to that healer. There's no magic fix. There's no magic pill. There's no waving of the wand. There's no escaping your growth. And that's the great part is, guess what? You're responsible for your growth, which also means you're responsible for your growth. You're the creator of it. How cool is that? Nobody gets that from you,
mm, that's it. That's
right?
exactly right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
fun. How are you going to create it?
Mm.
I mean, we can
And
go through Dark Night of the Soul as mad can be, or we can go through it and surrender to it and be excited that the universe saw fit for us to evolve and awaken.
Mm. And even in acknowledging that there are some people who are in that space where they don't allow themselves to acknowledge that or accept that, and that's then another level that needs to be cleared before they can accept that they are the creators,
Yes.
depending on people's experiences. And this is often, many people that in our line of work that we will work with, that they're consciously very blocked by past experiences, that they may not even feel the belief that
Yeah.
they can have what they want. They don't know what they want.
Talk
So
about that in the next podcast we do.
yeah,
Let's talk
definitely.
about the roles we take on in creating our lives.
Yeah, that would be
How
a
about
great,
that one?
great session, that one. Mhm.
Fabulous. Then let's wrap this one up because we are almost out of time anyways.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you. Oh, thank you. And thank you all for joining us. Remember to hit subscribe. If you leave us a good rating and comments, it really does help our visibility on the podcast apps and iTunes grow. We love and support everything with you. If you want to request a certain topic to be covered, all you
Yeah.
have to do is go follow me or Miss O'Brien Julie on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook, Fierce Slayer Bernadette. Julie, what is your Facebook name?
Julie O'Brien, Empath Esprit. Yeah, which is ESPRIT.
So just follow us on Facebook. Like I said, our links are in the bio, and then message and say, hey, I listened to your podcast.
Yeah.
And I would love if you guys would cover this topic, and we will cover the topics that you guys want to hear about. If you're interested in being a guest on our podcast, reach out to us in the same vein. I love doing interviews. Or if you just want to jump on and you guys are like, hey, I'm just a listener, but I have some questions. Can you answer them live? We would love to do that and then broadcast the answers out there to our podcast listeners. So thank you. You guys have a good one. We will be back next time.
Thank you. Thanks, Bernadette. Thanks, everybody.